Kojak, Foolio's cousin, is about to be released from prison, and the whispers on the street say he's not coming home just to make music. He's coming back to settle scores. With each passing moment, the tension grows between KTA and ATK, and the streets are caught in a deadly cycle that seems impossible to break. Is ATK prepared for what's coming? The KTA-ATK feud. Kojak's threat of revenge makes it clear that the fighting is far from over. This is no longer just a feud, it's a full-on war. Kojak and Foolio were more than just friends. They were cousins who helped each other with their music careers and in everyday life. As they went through the dangerous streets of Jacksonville together, their bond got stronger. With Foolio's murder, Kojak lost more than just a friend. He also lost a family member. Kojak was sentenced to 3 years in jail for gun possession in 2021, and he will be free this year. Word on the street is that he's out for blood. After Foolio's death, Kojak shared a jail photo of the two of them. In Jacksonville's gang culture, it's common for the street code to call for revenge when pals are killed. So it is hardly surprising that Kojak desires retribution, particularly on Youngin Ace, the face of ATK. The enmity between KTA and ATK has been going strong for a long time. What started out as a musical rivalry quickly turned into a cycle of violence in response, with diss tracks becoming death threats and street fights ending in shootings. While Foolio was the most visible member of KTA, Youngin Ace represents ATK. These two people have been at the center of this fight, using their fame to troll, threaten, and instigate one another. One of the earliest blows came when Foolio's mother was shot 8 times in 2018. This was likely a targeted attack meant to send a message to Foolio and his followers.
I got shot in 2018. I got hit up on my left side, my whole left side of my body, but all the bullets landed to my right side. And I suffered I got bullet fragments on my spine. The bullets are still in me to this day. I got bullet fragments on my right spine. I had a fractured femur. I had get a split in my pelvis. I was on a walker, and things of that sort. They did it because they wanted him. And they figured, hey, let's go get his mama.
The violence didn't end there, though. Zion Brown, another cousin of Kojak's, was brutally killed, which broke up his life even more. The death of Zion was especially painful, not just because of the close family ties, but also because of how he was killed. Zion Brown was killed in his home, which should have been a safe place to be away from the chaos outside. The violence was now knocking on the doors of family members, claiming lives with ruthless precision. Zion Brown's murder may not have been solved like many others, but an important piece of information was found out. Police got important information from Zion's sister, who was also shot during the incident but luckily lived. She knew who had shot him. He wasn't just a faceless gunman, he was someone she knew. DeAndre Thomas, a Facebook friend and the boyfriend of one of her close friends. DeAndre Thomas wasn't a stranger to the police. His name had been in the system long before he became the prime suspect in Zion Brown's murder. With a rap sheet that included drug possession charges and a series of burglaries in Clay County, Thomas was already living on the edge of the law. One particular burglary stood out, a firearm theft that connects him to Youngin Ace. This happened just 7 months before Zion Brown's murder. The duo conspired to rob someone reportedly selling weed, but the situation quickly got worse. Shots were fired into the home, nearly hitting a couple and their 1-year-old child. Ace eventually pleaded no contest to the charges. Then, on the day that Foolio was gunned down, Youngin Ace dropped his Do It music video. The timing of the release was no coincidence. Many saw it as Ace's way of claiming his place in the ongoing war and showing that he wasn't just surviving it, he was thriving in it. The video showing Ace surrounded by his crew, flaunting money and brandishing weapons, felt like a victory lap. The lyrics, which talked about living on the streets and never giving up on his enemies, only added fuel to the fire. For Foolio's supporters, the video was an insult because it showed that their leader was no longer with them and Ace was still standing tall and defiant. Many people thought that the video was a planned move to show who was in charge after Foolio's death. There were a lot of stories and conspiracy theories going around. Even so, Ace was quick to deny any participation, even though the streets were full of rumors that he was the one behind Foolio's murder. He took to Instagram Live to distance himself from the killings, presenting a more conciliatory image to the public. According to Ace, the fight between him and Foolio wasn't as personal as many believed.
What you think about Foolio dying, cuz? That's sad, twin. I ain't gonna lie, bro. Y'all boys in the street, y'all didn't leave the streets alone, twin. All condone and like that. But y'all just gotta stay. Y'all gotta. It's so funny, cause me, bro, like we cool, like we was cool and
Ace, who seemed to be sad, couldn't help but poke fun during an interview. He mockingly claimed that he cried when he found out about Foolio's death.
Where were you when you found out about that?
I was in the bed crying, like damn, crazy.
You shed a tear?
Multiple.
This kind of taunting didn't sit well with Foolio's crew. Already furious and seeking revenge, Ace's teasing only added fuel to the fire. The streets were ready to erupt, with Foolio's homies determined to make Ace pay for what they believed was his involvement in their friend's death. Kojak's silence has hinted that Youngin Ace is now a marked man, and that Foolio's death will be avenged no matter the cost. On the other hand, Youngin Ace sent out a scary message on Instagram. He made it clear that he was ready for anything, even if it meant them going to jail or being killed.
You approach me, be ready to die. Be ready to die or go to jail.
That's not your mentality, is that?
That's my mentality. I'm ready to die or go to jail right now.
This tone of defiance was very different from the tone of regret he had used earlier. It was a warning to anyone thinking of coming after him, including Kojak and those who sought to avenge Foolio's death. Youngin Ace has made it clear that anyone who tried to attack him would have to deal with the worst possible outcomes. It feels more like a war zone on the streets of Jacksonville, and in this world, only the strongest survive. To fully understand how important Ace's warning was, you have to remember that he almost died in an attack in 2018 that also killed 3 of his friends. The fight, which happened after a night out at a nearby bowling alley, was a turning point in the Jacksonville feud. It was the start of a string of strikes in revenge that would kill many people. That terrible night, Ace and his group were caught off guard as they drove through the city. A hail of bullets rained down on their car, killing 3 of Ace's closest friends, 19-year-old Trayvon Bullard, 18-year-old Royale Smith, and 18-year-old Jacoby Groover. Ace himself was hit multiple times, but luckily he lived. People saw the strike as a direct hit, letting Ace know that his enemies were getting closer. This was the start of a chain of events that lost lives on both sides. The streets turned into a battlefield, with every death leading to another. This violence is relentless, and no one is safe. As long as both sides remained locked in this deadly game, the body count would only continue. Barely a week after Foolio's murder, the streets of Jacksonville witnessed another shocking murder. The victim this time was 29-year-old Darius Beals, who was shot dead in the parking lot of Laurel Grove Apartments. Darius Beals wasn't just another victim. He was the bigger brother of Lul Leakey, who was one of the most feared shooters in Jacksonville. Lul Leakey, an important member of 1200, had a bad past with Foolio. The competition between them was fierce, personal, and deadly. Tense situations between them got so bad that Lou Leakey almost killed Foolio's girlfriend in a drive-by shooting. It was a close call, and Foolio talked about it in interviews. Foolio beat up Lil Papa, Lul Leakey's brother, at a Foot Locker store, which is where their fight began. The whole thing was caught on camera, and it showed Foolio and 2 of his friends working together against Lil Papa. The fight stopped when one of Lil Papa's friends showed up to back him up, which made Foolio and his group run away. Later, Foolio bragged about the fight and how he and his buddy Kojak had beaten Lil Papa. The fight didn't end there, though. Foolio and Lul Leakey were rivals for a long time, and their hatred finally reached a boiling point with fatal consequences. Leakey was killed in 2020. The fact that his brother was killed so soon after Foolio seemed like too much of a coincidence to be ignored. And now the violence isn't stopping with the death of Darius Beals. Even women found themselves caught up in the crossfire. In one very scary case, a woman was shot several times while sitting in her car on Emerson Street near Spring Glen Road. Many people think this attack had something to do with the ongoing feud, but this hasn't been proven. The woman suffered gunshot wounds to her arm, leg, and back. The attackers, after unleashing a hail of bullets, fled the scene in a black 4-door sedan. Even though the police haven't said for sure that this shooting is related to Foolio's death, the timing and circumstances have led many to believe that it was connected. The world of KTA and ATK is a dangerous place where anyone can become a target, and women are often used as pawns in the deadly game. Even Foolio's mother had hinted at the involvement of women in setting up gang members.
You thinking these girls, your friends and all that type of stuff, they try to set you up.
In this instance of Foolio's death, police reports revealed that the killers had used a woman to get one of Foolio's friends to drop his location. Surprisingly, this tactic wasn't new. Foolio had faced similar betrayals before. One of the times Foolio was betrayed was on October 6, 2023. His opponents attacked his car with bullet holes, and one of them hit him in the foot with a gun. After the attack, things got very chaotic. Foolio was quickly taken to UF Health Jacksonville for treatment. The risk didn't end at the hospital, though. While Foolio was in the hospital getting better, his phone blew up with texts from fans and friends telling him that someone knew where he was. What was so shocking? A nurse at the hospital is said to have leaked the information about where Foolio was, putting his life at even greater risk. This was just one case of many where women were used to leak important information, which ended in deaths. Foolio's life, already hanging by a thread, became even more precarious as he realized that betrayal could come from anyone, even those meant to help him. Investigation and revelation. As more and more bodies piled up, police worked harder to find and punish the people who killed Foolio. Part of the reason the probe into his death was hard and complicated was that there is a culture of silence in the streets. Collecting accurate information was hard in places where snitching is seen as the worst kind of betrayal. But with the help of surveillance, informants, and a lot of hard work, the police were able to piece together what happened before Foolio died. So far, law enforcement officials have arrested 21-year-old Isaiah Chance, 21-year-old Alicia Andrews, 18-year-old Sean Gathright, and 30-year-old Rashad Murphy. Investigators are now looking for the last suspect believed to be involved, 27-year-old Davion Murphy. From what they initially learned, the three shooters are likely Sean Gathright, Rashad Murphy, and Davion Murphy. The people who were thought to have done the shooting were connected to or members of the gangs ATK and 1200. Police think that the ATK and the 1200 worked together. The close ties to Youngin Ace make people even more suspicious that Foolio's death was part of a larger plan to hurt KTA. The arrests were a big step forward in the investigation, but it was clear that the case was still not over. Police were still looking for other people who may have been involved in the murder, and stories were going around about who might be next on the hit list. You could feel the fear, and the tension was so strong that you could cut it with a knife. The investigation was anything but simple. Even though progress was made, there were many false leads, conflicting testimony, and the constant threat of revenge that the detectives had to deal with. When there is gang warfare, the truth is often buried under layers of lies. It takes skill and drive to get to the bottom of things. One important part of the complicated chain of events that led to Julio Foolio's death stands out: the part played by an Airbnb reservation that went wrong. This mistake, which seemed small at the time, led to a series of new information that connected several suspects to the crime. Alicia Andrews did something very wrong that led to her downfall. She used the name of a known member of the gang when she tried to book an Airbnb. This move, which was probably meant to confuse the police, had the opposite effect. Investigators later used the digital trail to figure out where the group was and what they were doing in the hours before Foolio was killed. But the name wasn't the only thing that tied her to the crime. The stay at the Airbnb was funded through Gudaze's Cash App, a payment method that further connected the dots for detectives. As the investigation went on, surveillance footage turned out to be one of the damning pieces of evidence against the group. Several cameras, starting with the one at the Airbnb, caught them. The video showed Alicia Andrews and her accomplices entering and leaving the house, clearly getting ready for what was to come. Next, cameras at Sean's house caught the group getting guns, which they would later use to kill Foolio. These guns weren't just any guns. They were rifles with shell catches. Shell catchers are designed to capture spent cartridges, preventing them from being left behind at a crime scene and making it harder for police to trace the bullets back to the shooter. Movements of the group were also caught at a Walmart, where Rashad and some of the other members were seen the night before the hit. They bought things that were later found at the crime scene, which made the link between what they did and Foolio's death even stronger. As more information came in, the investigation painted a troubling picture of how the group worked that night. Alicia Andrews and Zay weren't just observers. They were actively searching the area and keeping an eye on things. Their job was to make sure the hit went off without a hitch by telling the shooters about any possible risks or witnesses. A girl with ties to Foolio also had a part, but it's not clear what her exact role was. There is no doubt that this was a group effort, with each person having a precise part to play in the murder. The time of the hit was just as deadly as it was planned. Rashad was the first to shoot. His shot set off the ambush, which was then joined by Sean and Davion Murphy. Insights from the official affidavit. More so, as Alicia Andrews was being questioned, her part in the murder plan became more and more clear. However, she didn't tell the truth. Instead, she lied to the police over and over, trying to cover her tracks. Each falsehood was carefully documented in the affidavit. She tried to trick the investigation, but there was too much proof against her to succeed. They had surveillance footage, digital transactions, and witness accounts, so they were able to catch her lying and use them to make their case stronger. Unfortunately for Andrews, her lies only added to the case against her. Another important piece of evidence against the suspects came when Sean Gathright was arrested during a traffic stop in a Jacksonville parking lot. Investigators say officers found a Glock 9mm pistol, a rifle, and 9 spent rifle casings. Detectives said the spent shell casings were from 2 different shootings that happened before Foolio's death, a different murder in May and a shooting in October of last year that they said was an attempt to kill Foolio. Investigators also said while searching Sean Gathright's house after Foolio was shot and killed, detectives found several rifles in a gun safe and at least one that had a brass catcher. Investigators say that the brass catcher was the same one that was used in the shooting of Foolio, so casings wouldn't be left at the scene. Court documents also said that detectives found 2 empty shell casings from the gun that was used to kill Foolio and another person. This link between the forensics wasn't just a coincidence. It was the smoking gun that detectives needed to put more pressure on the people involved. As if the mounting evidence wasn't enough, Sean Gathright's behavior during his interrogation only strengthened the case against him. He is said to have tried to get out of the interrogation room by climbing through the roof. The police quickly stopped stop this bold move, but it showed how scared he was about what was going to happen. What he did showed that he knew the walls were closing in on him. When he was arrested, he was already being watched and had an ankle monitor on because he had been charged before. While being questioned, Sean Gathright told police that if he was freed, he would flee the state. This statement was more than enough to show the court that he was likely to run away, ensuring that none of the suspects would receive bond until their trial. The court's decision to refuse bond showed that they knew these people were a threat to the community and that they would probably try to avoid being caught if they had the chance. Foolio's mother and gang retaliation. Since Foolio's death, his mother has been more out there. In interviews, she has been honest and heartbreakingly open about how her sadness affects her daily life. Losing a child is every mother's worst nightmare, and for Foolio's mother, that nightmare has become a reality she must confront every day. When Foolio first started with his involvement on the streets, his mother knew what he was doing and the risks that came with it. She often told him that the way he was living was dangerous and urged him to think about what would happen if he kept doing what he was doing. Once, when Foolio was 14, he was shot, and every other month, another kid died. This made her very scared. She said in this interview,
"What's finna happen next? Who finna get shot next? It's just not gonna stop."
She talked about calling him and having other people call him until he blocked her. He also didn't tell her anything about what he did, most likely because he didn't want to put her in uncomfortable situations. She had even talked to some parents and shared posts and information with them because they wanted them to be safe, because their kids wouldn't listen to their advice.
We were sharing like posts and stuff, that anything we found out, we were exchanging information or whatever, because we wanted each other to be safe. So at the end of the day, you could tell these kids what to do and all that type of stuff right there, but they're gonna do what they want to do. We can't control nobody who want their kid to do stuff like this. Nobody.
Not only were these warnings about the physical risk, but also about how living a life where you're always looking over your shoulder would make you feel. She spoke about how she begged Foolio to leave Jacksonville since he has a house somewhere else, but he wouldn't leave. She knew that beneath his cockiness, Foolio was a young man struggling with the harsh facts of the world he lived in, a world where enemies could appear anywhere and trust was hard to come by. In her interviews, she talked about the war between the KTA and ATK gangs that is still going on. She is afraid that Foolio's death will only lead to more violence as his loyalists seek payback, creating a never-ending cycle of violence. Her words carry the weight of someone who has seen too much loss, not just in her own family, but in the community at large. According to her, Foolio's murder was a paid hit.
Do you think it was a paid hit?
I do. Because we don't know them people. Who are those people? Who is that girl? Who sent you?
For her, the ongoing conflict is a senseless waste of life, driven by pride and a misguided sense of honor. Yet amid her sorrow, she has found the strength to call for an end to the violence, to plead with those still caught in the cycle of revenge to choose a different path. Because Zion Brown was killed, there has been a circle of revenge that has grown stronger over the years. Every hit or loss has been met with a counterstrike, starting a never-ending back and forth that doesn't look like it will end anytime soon. The killing of Foolio in Tampa is more than just another death in the war. It's an attack on KTA's identity and pride. He was more than just a rapper. He was a symbol on the streets of Jacksonville, and the message is clear: no one is safe. The likelihood of further retaliation from KTA in response to Foolio's death is not just a possibility, it's a near certainty. It's been made clear by the gang that they won't take this loss lying down. Whether through cryptic social media posts, graffiti tags, or direct threats, the message from KTA has been consistent: we're coming for you. The same patriotism and pride that made them want to get revenge for Zion Brown also made them want to get revenge for Foolio's death. For the KTA, every act of violence against their members needs a response, and each answer makes things worse. As the rivalry between KTA and ATK continues to heat up, the potential for new attacks grows increasingly likely. Many lives have been lost by both teams, and the desire to even the score is a strong drive. Since the death of Foolio is still fresh in their minds, KTA members are probably already making plans for their next move and how to hit ATK where it hurts the most. From now on, every move is very important. The violence could get out of hand, causing more deaths and bloodshed, and making the community even more divided. With Kojak's words still up in the air, the stakes have never been higher. It's only a matter of time before the next shot is fired. This has left the community reeling, and now everyone is wondering what will happen next. How many more people will die in this war before it reaches its bloody conclusion? Could there be a compromise, or are both sides too angry at each other to even think about peace? And most importantly, what will it take to break the cycle of violence that has already claimed so many young lives?